November 1st, 2023, and somebody left the windows open, y'all. It's cold. We hit 42 this morning. What are you gonna do? You're gonna put on another layer is what you're gonna do. We have the Tecate 3 back on the lift today, and kind of want to address a few things with it. This machine, again, has really been worked over the years and changed and modified. We're gonna kind of have to do some of that ourselves. And so first off, as you see, I've already got it tore down a little bit. The chain had no more adjustment in it, and this is a custom swing arm. I don't think it's a store-bought swing. I think somebody just kind of welded to it and added some length to it until they decided that was enough. Reason being is just the tops of welds. They're kind of chewing gum, bubble gummed up here. Where they cut it seemed to be okay. They cut it right here on both sides, and then they put this rib on it, which I like that. They extended that rib all the way down to reinforce it, and that weld looks pretty good. I don't think the same guy maybe did this as did that, but yeah, it's different. So I've been working on it. Y'all know I like to work with the camera off, and our chain has got a mile of tension in it. Now I've got the rear carrier loose. I'm going to go ahead and put carrier bearings in it. These bearings, I'm not going to say they were bad, but they were going to be bad pretty soon. They had a pretty good amount of play in it. Since we've got the rear end tore down, we're going to go ahead and put rear carrier bearings in the rear. My plan on the chain here is the chain is in good shape looking at it. The teeth on the sprocket are in good shape. They're not new, but they're not bad. So what we're going to do is I'm going to cut a link out of the chain, and we're going to take a link out of the chain and shorten it. That should allow us to get the correct tension on the chain itself. New carrier bearings is always a good thing to do. We're going to go through and methodically replace these nuts and bolts. We've got some hardware here from a pickup truck and a few other things going on. We're going to kind of change out. I'd like to get some lock nuts on here and possibly maybe some nylon, something that's not going to back out. I told y'all when I bought this machine, the first thing I did was kind of tear it apart a little bit and look at it, and every nut and bolt on this rear suspension was finger tight. I mean, this bolt right here was finger tight. I've tightened everything just to start riding it to kind of really do a good appraisal of what I thought about the machine. It's little things. It's like this tank mount. Somebody's welded this back on. This machine, you know, I build the story. You'll know how I do that. I build the story. This is definitely not a factory weld here. This one is even worse. It's not going to cause you to wreck or anything, but it's just not factory. So kind of finding things that aren't factory. But this is the big culprit right here. And so a couple of things I've been looking at, and I mentioned it when we first got the machine in. Let me set the camera up here. And we've talked about this before. When you buy something like this, this is when you start reading and learning about it, and all the flaws that, you know, have showed up over 40 years, and that's just part of it. Apparently these tails break off quite often, known for it. Maybe that's why the seller that had this didn't have a grab bar on the back. That's just too much leverage, you know. I don't know. I'm just kind of building a case here. But this bracket here looks OE. It looks to be an original weld in place. I don't know. We're going to go with it. The seat does not latch in the back. All right, so with our seat engaged in this front mount, if you look back here, what I think has happened with the seat engaged fully and bottomed out in the front, which fits really good to the tank. When you pull these little fingers back here, one, there's supposed to be a spring on them, and there's not. But you'd have to pull the seat all the way back here for it to really latch. And if you do that, it's not very well connected in the front. I think what's happened when this broke, someone welded it in the wrong spot. Because we're going to cut this weld out of here, and then we're going to sleeve it with an internal piece of pipe, and then we're going to drive this onto that piece of pipe. We're going to drill into it, and we're going to do a plug weld on either side of our gap, and then we're going to weld our gap up. That will make it twice as strong, if not more, than it was before it was broken. So let's get started. Let's cut this chain off. Let's get these rear wheel bearings in. And before we're done tonight, I'd like to cut that tail off so I can go get a piece of pipe. Really all there is to taking a link out of a chain. Now let me be real clear here. Your chain probably isn't going to be able to take a whole link out. We're talking that's almost a full inch. Most of these ATVs run a 540 chain, which is a pretty good sized piece of chain. If you look at it, this is what we just took out of it. Whoever set this up, the chain was probably a tad too big when they first built it, and now the chain stretched, you know, from use. Now the chain was a lot too big. And so because it was just a little too big before, I was pretty confident we could take a link out. And how I knew that, I took the chain and loosened the rear swing arm, took it all the way into its minimum distance. I took the chain and then kind of bunched it up, and I was able to take 2 links and fold over and basically eliminate 1 link without cutting anything. That told me I was really, really close to being able to cut one out without any issues. As you see, there's still quite a bit of slop in the chain, but now we have all the adjustment left to take out. Right now the rear carrier's pulled all the way in, and it's, you know, you could actually ride with it there. We've got plenty of tension to come back here with our factory adjustments, and we can tighten that chain up as tight as it needs to go. There's a right and wrong way to put a master link in position, and what I want to show you is the master link is comprised of 3 pieces. You have the inner piece, which has your 2 posts that come all the way through your 2 sets, your 2 links from each piece of chain. And then you have a solid piece that goes on first. And then you have this retainer clip. And that's really the most important part. When you put the retainer clip on, the C, it's open on one side and it's solid on the other. The solid part needs to be going in the direction of the machine, whatever it is. I don't care if it's a bicycle, motorcycle, 4-wheeler, whatever. And the reason that is because when that chain is going in that direction, if it hits something, it will just hit whatever that may be, a stick or a rock or something like that. Maybe if it gets sloppy and hits the side of the frame or something, but it's always going to be hitting against the solid part of that C-clip or that outer retainer. If you put that C-clip on this way and you're going down the trail and you hit a stick, it could pop that clip off. I've had it happen. It happens all the time. You got to be careful about that kind of stuff. So because you're doing 60, 70 miles an hour on this thing, and yet chain wraps around the rear axle or the sprocket or something, and you're going to come to a really fast stop. And that's the kind of stuff that, you know, people get hurt. So just something real simple is putting that master link in. Make sure that the solid part of the C is going in the direction of the machine. That's it. Okay, so now we're back here. I have never taken one of these particular carriers apart. It looks a lot like a 185S. I was able to source some bearings online and some replacement seals. They weren't even that expensive, so that's a good thing. But let's see if they fit. So basically what we've got here, it's a lot like any of your sport 3-wheelers, 4-wheelers, they're all kind of the same. You've got a set of jam nuts on this one side or axle nut on this side, and that pulls tension on the axle. As this bolt tightens up, everything gets pulled that way. And so what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to take everything off the right side, which I know that looks like the most. But it really isn't, because the axle looks like it's going to go out the left side or something like that. That one's loose. Look at that. That's the kind of stuff I was talking about. Look at, I'm going to do it really slow. This is the kind of stuff you got to go back and check when you buy something. Watch this. Watch that bolt. It's moving. That's the kind of stuff you're going to run into. All right, just like that. About 15 minutes, 3.5 good old-timey rock and roll songs. Depends on how you measure your life, you know what I mean? You do not need a press to do this. You can do this manually. You can do it on the machine. I'm gonna take this one off just to really clean it up. You kind of get a feeling about machines when you get them. Maybe they were not taken care of, maybe as good as they could have been. So let's take this carrier off of here. We can look at it a little bit better. I'll kind of go over the pieces and parts of it. You're gonna have 2 outer seals. You're gonna have 2 outer bearings, and then you're gonna have a spacer, a piece of pipe, more than likely on the inside, that keeps those 2 bearings from being compressed. When you tighten that axle up on it, that keeps the bearings from, you know, being squeezed. So as you see, I've got the carrier mounted up over here in the vise, nothing special. And don't squeeze it so much that you deform it. You know, you just want a good place to hold it. We're gonna do some hammering around it here. This is that outer rubber seal. I'm just kind of eyeballing it here to see if it's new or not. They make a seal puller. I actually have one. Aha! But I'm not real sure how to use it. So let's see what we can do here. Hey, well, that does make that job easier. Normally, I just take a screwdriver and kind of get after it a little bit, but well, there you go. You can pick these up down in the description. There's a link. I picked this one up on Amazon. Now, when you're dealing with this, I've done this a couple of different ways. I told you about that piece of pipe that's in here. If you can't get this bearing out, if you can slide the pipe over, and I'll show you with the camera here in just a second. This is the piece of pipe that I'm referring to. It's a spacer, it's all it is. And what you can do is you can use that spacer to push the other bearing and seal out the other side. Be sure when you have your carrier supported that you don't have a block of wood under the bottom. It's got to have somewhere to go. But this is a good way to look at it and understand it. We took the rubber seal out. This is our bearing here, and then that's the piece of pipe. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to back the camera up a little bit. What I'm doing is I'm hitting directly on the far end bearing and not hitting on that piece of pipe. There's our piece of pipe. So there's our other bearing, came out the bottom. Not a pretty job, but not a difficult job either. Flip it over, do the same thing. We just want to knock that bearing out the other side. There's our other bearing. Now looking at the amount of grease that was in there, somebody's been in there. Somebody's packed it full of grease, which is not a bad thing. One of the things to watch out for is when your axle, and you'll see this a lot. I saw it with just about all of them. Your big red 3-wheelers, your 200 class, your 200E, your 200ES. Those axles, what happens is this piece of pipe is not greased, and your axle runs through here, and this rusts because it's black iron pipe basically. It's just steel. It's not painted. It's not protected in any way other than the grease. People put them back together dry and they go, you know, it doesn't need any grease because it really doesn't spin. And it really doesn't spin. But when these machines break and they sit for 5 or 10 or 15 years, this rusts up and it grabs hold of that axle. And then when you come along and you try to take that axle out, this doesn't let go. And then you end up finding a press. And then you have to press that axle out of here. And that's about 6 inches of rust you're gonna have to fight. And I've seen them. Oh, I actually broke one. There's a video of me breaking a front hub trying to get one of these out. So I know that's nasty and I make jokes about how greasy that is, but that's really what you want. You want to make sure there's enough grease in there that, heaven forbid, your machine breaks and sits for a long time, you know, that rust starts to develop in there and then it grabs hold of that axle and doesn't want to let go. So that's really it. I'm going to take this, I'm going to wipe it down really good. I'm going to put some fresh grease in it. These bearings are sealed. If you don't know, and guys, I get it in the comments all the time. I know 99% of y'all may know this, but that 1% out there don't. And sometimes we overlook that. And so this is a sealed bearing. If you're unsure of the difference, when you see the individual balls that go all the way around this, that's a caged bearing. Well, this is a caged bearing also, but the outside edge has got a protective cover over it on both sides. That way you don't see the balls. That keeps the grease that the factory put in there, that keeps that in there, and that keeps the dirt and the schmutz from getting in there. And so these bearings are supposed to last, supposedly, you know, the lifetime of whatever you put them in. Now, lifetime is a little stretch of the imagination. As you see, the bearings we took out were sealed too, but they had quite a bit of play in them. So let me get this cleaned up. We'll put it back together. The reassembly is pretty straightforward. We're going to put the new bearings in. We're going to put our spacer in. We're going to put our dust shields on the outside, or our dust covers on the outside. We're going to thread the axle back through. We're going to put it all back together. We're going to put our new shortened chain on, and this project will be pretty much done. And then we're going to cut the back of this frame off. So let's do that quickly. Yeah, that's interesting. Looks like somebody's been here before us, had the same idea, just didn't do a very good job. Wow, look at that. Somebody already put something in there. Well, that took a 5-minute job and made it a day. Well, our hour fix is going to turn into an afternoon. Somebody's already been here and somebody's already attempted to do the repair I suggested. If they'd have done it properly, we wouldn't be going through this. They did exactly what we talked about. They made a solid piece, slipped in between the two. The problem is they couldn't weld. Somebody came in with brazen rod, and you see this gold in here. That's brass. See the color? It's brass probably. And I think they brazed it together. See all the different color? The gold. Yeah. Found gold. It looks kind of cool, bobbed off though, doesn't it? Huh. So now what I've got to do is I'll kind of back up and regroup. To work with this or to try to cut it out. So we ended up cleaning up both sides. We're going to keep the post on this side, and we beveled this one down all the way around. We did it on both sides. So we're going to treat this as a solid bar that we're trying to repair. This is going to treat this as the slug that it is inside our original piece of pipe. It's going to slide on like so. And then what we'll do is we'll build all this up with weld in our finished product, basically. Yeah, because we're not going to be able to really get in here and do a whole lot of grinding and cleaning up. So we're going to have to be pretty good with our welding here. Yeah, it's so dusty. That was literally half a lap and you couldn't even see anymore. But there's our chain. Got plenty of slop in it now, but not too much. Carrier bearings in the rear. Seat has stayed put. It didn't move underneath my butt when I was riding. That's always important. And yeah, you know, that's a small victory. That's a small victory. This is a fun machine, guys. I gotta tell you, I know I preach Honda to y'all, you know, every week, but that's nice. That is a nice machine if you get the opportunity. And I've let a couple of other people ride it since I've gotten it, and nobody has gotten off of it without a smile on their face. It's fast and it's fun, and the throttle response, I don't know. I'm gonna have to get the 86 down and we'll do a comparison, because that throttle response is, you can hear me playing with it. Love that. Love that. All in all, it's a good day in the neighborhood. Good day in the neighborhood. Check that out. There's your thumbnail right there, guys. That's a good looking machine. Let's get that headlight on there. I've got some hardware. Let's see what this headlight's gonna look like. There you go. Look at that. Cyclops is back. All right, next time we'll bring it out. We'll find a switch for it. We'll make that work. And I'll look into that. I'm not sure. It should have high and low. It's got 3 prongs out the back, so that should be a dual element. But not sure. We may have to put a Honda switch on there. You never know. As always, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it. Y'all take care.